Just 5 minutes ago, a seismic shift erupted across the global landscape, shaking the very foundations of the British monarchy to its core. What many have whispered about in dark corners, what the tabloids have speculated on for months, has finally manifested in the form of a definitive, chilling document. King Charles III, the man who waited a lifetime to wear St. Edward's crown, has allegedly just signed his abdication papers. These are not merely administrative files. They represent the sudden, violent end of a brief but turbulent era and the beginning of the greatest constitutional crisis the House of Windsor has faced in over a century. Imagine the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace right now. A deafening silence hangs over the grand corridors behind closed doors, while outside, hundreds of camera lenses are trained on the balcony, waiting for a final, world-altering confirmation. Keywords like abdication, end of lineage, and emergency succession are dominating every search engine on the planet. But why now? Why would a king, so recently crowned, choose to walk away from ultimate power just as his reign was beginning to take shape? The answer lies within the lines of a text allegedly leaked from the king's private office documents that the world caught its first glimpse of only moments ago. This story is exploding not just as a political event, but because it strikes at the heart of our deepest fears about stability and tradition. Around the world, audiences are paralyzed in a state of shock. Betrayal, loyalty, and the crushing weight of the crown are all merging into a narrative more dramatic than any Hollywood script. Rumors are swirling that severe health issues, the hidden pain that King Charles tried to mask with forced smiles in public, have finally pushed him to the brink. He cannot continue, or perhaps he is no longer being permitted to continue. As the first images of these alleged abdication papers hit private forums, public opinion has been instantly and violently divided. On one side is a deep empathy for an aging man, seeking the peace of his final years. On the other is a raw terror of an uncertain future. This is not your typical royal scandal. It is the physical collapse of a global symbol. If these documents are verified as authentic, the position of Prince William, the role of Princess Catherine, and the very survival of the monarchy are being placed on a knife's edge. Headlines are screaming, the truth revealed, and Charles abandons everything. But what is truly hidden inside those pages? Is this a voluntary choice, or a silent coup from within the royal machinery? We are standing at a historic crossroads. What has transpired in the last 5 minutes has completely rewritten the future of the British throne. The palace may choose its familiar strategy of silence, but silence now only confirms one thing: the shadow of abdication has truly fallen over the throne. Do not look away, because what we are about to decode will send chills down your spine regarding what really happened behind the velvet curtains of ultimate power. The shock of the leaked abdication papers is not just about a change in leadership, it is about the physical and mental implosion of a man who spent 70 years preparing for a role he may now be forced to abandon. To understand why these papers exist, we must look past the gold leaf and the velvet. Sovereignty is not a gift, it is a life sentence. For King Charles, the burden of the crown has proven to be heavier than any history book could describe. Behind the carefully curated images of royal tours and garden parties, a much darker reality has been festering, a reality of medical secrecy and an agonizing struggle against time itself. The palace machinery is designed to project strength, to hide the tremors of a human body, failing under the weight of an ancient institution. But even the most sophisticated public relations team cannot hide the truth forever. Sources close to the inner sanctum of the palace describe an atmosphere of profound exhaustion. The king's recent appearances have been marked by a frailty that no amount of expert lighting or makeup could fully conceal. The tragic news whispered in the corridors isn't just about a diagnosis, it's about the realization that the king's vision for a slimmed-down monarchy is collapsing because the architect himself no longer has the strength to build it. The alleged abdication papers represent a moment of absolute surrender. They suggest that Charles has reached a point where his duty to the crown has come into direct, violent conflict with his instinct for survival. This is the tu huyet, or the fatal flaw of the modern monarchy. the fiction that a human being can be an immortal symbol while their own biology is betraying them. In these leaked documents, the language is reportedly clinical, cold, and irrevocable. It speaks of a transition of power not as a choice, but as a necessity for the survival of the House of Windsor. The king is not just stepping down, he is being hollowed out by the very institution he swore to protect. The public is beginning to see the cracks in the mask. They see the swollen hands, the labored breathing, and the distant look in the eyes of a monarch who realized too late that the throne is a gilded cage. This isn't just a news story. It is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. The man who waited a lifetime for his moment in the sun is now retreating into the shadows, leaving behind a kingdom that is as confused as it is grieving. The question that haunts every royal watcher now is simple. Who forced the king's hand? Was this a noble sacrifice for the sake of his son, William? Or was it a calculated move by a shadow cabinet within the palace who decided that a dying king was a liability they could no longer afford? As the digital storm rages on, the silence from the king's private doctors speaks louder than any official statement. We are witnessing the final, painful breaths of an era. The crown is slipping, not because of a lack of will, but because the flesh has finally reached its limit. This is the secret the palace tried to bury, the secret that is now laid bare for the world to see in black and white. While the king grapples with his own biology, the invisible machinery of the British state is already in motion, operating with a ruthless efficiency that cares little for the man and everything for the office. The leaked abdication papers are not just a personal letter of resignation, they are the output of a high-stakes power play involving the men in gray suits, the senior advisors, and constitutional experts who manage the survival of the House of Windsor. In the corridors of power, there is a concept known as the tout-huet, or the fatal flaw of a modern monarchy, the risk that an ailing leader becomes a symbol of national decline. When a king can no longer project the image of an eternal, unchanging sovereign, the institution itself begins to rot from within. This is why the pressure on Charles has reached a breaking point. The Shadow Council has likely decided that for the monarchy to survive, the king must be sacrificed to make way for the future. The atmosphere in the meeting rooms of the Privy Council is described as one of absolute clinical detachment. They are analyzing the king's decline as a risk assessment. If these abdication papers were indeed finalized 5 minutes ago, it suggests a complete breakdown of the internal hierarchy. This is a constitutional emergency. An abdication is not a retirement. It is a structural reset that hasn't been seen since 1936. The legal ramifications are staggering. It involves the Regency Act, the Parliament, and the sudden, forced elevation of Prince William to the throne. But is William ready to take the crown under such dark circumstances? Rumors suggest that the Prince of Wales is caught in a profound moral dilemma, torn between his loyalty to his father and his duty to the institution that now demands he step over a broken king to secure the future of the line. The leaked papers reportedly contain specific clauses about the transition of military command and the transfer of the Duchy of Lancaster. These are the receipts of power, the evidence that this is no mere rumor. Every word in those documents has been vetted by constitutional lawyers who understand that one wrong syllable could trigger a Republican uprising. The public is left wondering, was this a voluntary surrender of power, or was Charles presented with a document he could not refuse? The tragic news isn't just about a failing body. It's about a failing legacy. A man who waited decades to rule is being told his time is up before he could even leave his mark. As the world waits for an official broadcast, the tension between the king's private residence at Clarence House and the administrative hub of Buckingham Palace has reached a fever pitch. The crown is no longer a symbol of unity. It is a weight that is crushing the very man who wears it. This is the ultimate betrayal of the myth, the moment the machine decides the human part is no longer necessary. With the stroke of a pen on those alleged abdication papers, the tectonic plates of the British Empire have shifted, and the epicenter of the shockwave is Kensington Palace. The focus now turns from the man who is leaving to the man who must take his place. Prince William has spent his entire life in the shadow of the throne, but he never expected the crown to be thrust upon him under such dark and chaotic circumstances. This is the moment of the Great Transition, a process that is as terrifying as it is historic. The leaked documents suggest that the mechanism for succession is already being triggered, moving faster than the public can process. But for William, this isn't just a promotion, it is a life sentence. He is stepping into a role that has just hollowed out his father, and the world is watching to see if he will be the savior of the House of Windsor or the final witness to its decline. Inside the private quarters of the Prince of Wales, the atmosphere is described not as one of triumph, but of profound somberness. Sources suggest that William is navigating a labyrinth of constitutional protocols and personal grief. The tripwire, or fatal vulnerability of his position, is that he must now embody the very stability that his father's abdication has shattered. He is inheriting a monarchy that is under siege from within and scrutinized from without. The leaked papers allegedly outline a fast-track coronation plan, a necessity to prevent a power vacuum that could be exploited by anti-monarchy movements. This is the brutal reality of the crown. It waits for no one, not even for a son to mourn the symbolic death of his father's reign. The pressure is immense. William is not just taking over a job, he is taking over a 1,000-year-old mystery that demands he sacrifice his privacy, his family's peace, and his own identity to become a living symbol. The public perception of William has always been one of the steady hand, but even a steady hand can tremble under the weight of an unexpected crown. The leaked abdication files reportedly mention the involvement of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Prime Minister in emergency briefings meetings that signify the gravity of the situation. There is a sense of sacred duty being weaponized. William is being told by the Shadow Council that the survival of the Commonwealth depends on his immediate and unquestioning assent. But at what cost? The tragedy of the Windsor lineage is that the crown often acts as a wedge between father and son. As Charles retreats into the silence of his illness, William must stand in the glare of the global spotlight, forced to project a strength he may not feel. This is the coronation of chaos, a moment where the future of the monarchy rests on the shoulders of one man who was born for this moment, but perhaps never truly wanted it to arrive like this. The documents are clear. The king is gone. Long live the king. But as the transition begins, the question remains, can William carry the weight that broke Charles? Or is the crown simply too heavy for any modern human to bear? The abdication of a British sovereign is never a domestic affair. It is a geopolitical earthquake that threatens to pull apart the very fabric of the Commonwealth. As the news of the alleged abdication papers spreads across the globe, the focus shifts from the gilded halls of London to the sun-drenched coast of California. The tripwire, or fatal vulnerability of the House of Windsor, has always been its fractured family, and now that fracture is a gaping wound. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, sits as a silent, looming figure in this crisis. The leaked documents allegedly contain clauses that specifically address the Sussex problem, legal stipulations designed to prevent a power struggle between the brothers during the transition. But in the age of viral misinformation and deep-seated resentment, can the palace truly contain the spare? For the Commonwealth, the king's sudden surrender is a signal of institutional decline. From Australia to Jamaica, Republican movements are seizing on this moment of chaos to question the necessity of a distant throne. The king was the glue holding these nations together. Without him, the monarchy looks less like a sacred tradition and more like a relic. But the most dangerous element is the emotional fallout. Sources suggest that Harry was blindsided by the news, left out of the inner loop until the papers were already signed. This exclusion is the final burn of the bridge. The abdication papers reportedly outline a hierarchy that leaves no room for reconciliation, effectively exiling the Sussexes from the future of the crown. This isn't just a change in leadership, it is a declaration of war within a bloodline. Behind the scenes, the tension is suffocating. While William prepares for his ascent, the ghost of Harry's grievances haunts every decision. The global public is divided. Some see Harry as the victim of a ruthless machine, while others see him as the ultimate threat to William's legitimacy. The leaked papers are said to include a continuity clause that reinforces the line of succession for William's children. ensuring that even in this chaos, the Sussex line remains firmly on the outside. But can a king who is stepping down truly dictate the future? The monarchy is at its most fragile when its secrets are laid bare. As the world watches the fallout, one thing is certain: the abdication of Charles is the ultimate test of the Windsor's survival. The crown is no longer just a symbol of power. It is a target in a global battle for narrative. The king has signed the papers, but the real struggle for the soul of the monarchy has only just begun. In the 5 minutes since the alleged abdication papers hit the public domain, the House of Windsor has lost its most powerful weapon: the ability to control the silence. For centuries, the British monarchy has survived on the principle of never complain, never explain, a calculated mystique that kept the public at a distance. But in the digital age, silence is no longer a shield. It is a vacuum that is instantly filled by chaos. This is the tu huyet, or the ultimate vulnerability of the modern crown. It is an analog institution trying to survive a digital execution. The leaked papers have triggered what experts call the information guillotine, where the narrative is no longer written by the palace press office, but by a global audience of billions, fueled by suspicion and a hunger for the truth behind the velvet curtain. Behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, the communications team is in a state of total paralysis. Sources suggest that emergency protocols are being ignored as the speed of the leak outpaces any official rebuttal. The tragic news isn't just that the king is stepping down, it's that the palace has lost its voice. If these documents are authentic, they represent the greatest security breach in the history of the modern state. But if they are a fabrication, the damage is equally devastating. A monarchy that cannot protect its own secrets, cannot protect its own legitimacy. The public is witnessing a real-time deconstruction of a 1,000-year-old myth. Every pixel of the alleged papers is being analyzed by amateur sleuths and professional intelligence agencies alike, searching for the fatal flaw that confirms the end of Charles's reign. The media war is no longer a battle of headlines. It is a battle for the soul of the nation's identity. Traditional outlets are scrambling to maintain a sense of decorum, while the internet's royal mystery machine is tearing the story apart. The leaked papers allegedly contain details of a media blackout plan that was supposed to be triggered only upon the king's death. The fact that it is being discussed now, while he is still alive, suggests a level of institutional panic that is unprecedented. Is the palace trying to bury the truth about Charles's health? Or are they trying to manage a transition that has already spiraled out of control? The king has lived his entire life in the glare of the spotlight, but he has never been more exposed than he is at this moment. The crown is being stripped of its mystery, and as the mask falls away, the world is left with a chilling realization. The institution is no longer in charge of its own destiny. The king has signed the papers, but the public is the one now holding the pen. The true tragedy of the alleged abdication papers lies not in the transfer of power, but in the erasure of a legacy before it could even be written. King Charles III spent 70 years in the waiting room of history, a record-breaking apprenticeship for a role that defines his entire existence. But if these documents are indeed the final word, his reign will be remembered as little more than a frantic prologue to the era of William. This is the tu huyet, or the existential wound of Charles's life. He became the bridge to a future he will never get to see. The leaked papers suggest a monarch who is being forced to preside over his own symbolic funeral, watching as the titles, the duties, and the very essence of his identity are stripped away while he is still drawing breath. In the cold calculus of the British state, the man is secondary to the continuity of the line. Charles is being asked to perform one final, agonizing duty for the crown, to disappear so that the institution may live. Inside the private quarters of Highgrove and Sandringham, the reality of this vanishing is said to be devastating. A king who is no longer a king is a ghost in his own palace. The abdication papers allegedly outline a shadow regency, a period where Charles remains a figurehead in name only, while the heavy lifting of the monarchy is transferred to William. This is the ultimate hollowing out. The public sees the signature on the paper, but they don't see the psychological cost of a man who has lost his purpose. The tragic news isn't just a medical diagnosis. It is the realization that history has passed him by. He was the transitional king, the caretaker of the myth between the long stability of Elizabeth and the modern expectations of William. But caretakers are rarely remembered with the same reverence as architects. Charles is finding that the crown he waited so long for was never truly his to keep. It was merely a loan, and the bank has called in the debt. The global perception of this short reign is already beginning to shift. What was once seen as a period of modernization is now being viewed as a period of fragility. The leaked papers reportedly discuss the sanitization of the record, a process where the palace tries to frame this abdication as a noble sacrifice rather than a medical or political necessity. But the public is smarter than the spin. They see a man who was broken by the very machine he helped maintain. The fatal flaw of the Windsor bloodline is exposed once again. It demands everything and gives back only the cold comfort of duty. As William prepares to step into the light, Charles is left in the long shadows of a reign that ended before it truly began. The king has signed his name, and in doing so, he has signed away his place in the sun. The papers are a testament to the fact that in the game of crowns, the house always wins, and the individual always loses. As the ink dries on the alleged abdication papers, the power in the House of Windsor has already physically moved. It has left the weary hands of Charles and settled with a ruthless finality upon William and Catherine. This is not just a change in personnel. It is a structural purge of the king's vision. The tripwire, or fatal vulnerability of Charles's reign, was his attempt to bridge two worlds, the ancient and the modern. But the shadow council behind the new king has decided that there is no more room for compromise. The leaked papers allegedly outline an immediate dismantling of Charles's slimmed-down projects in favor of a monarchy built on efficiency, high-stakes branding, and a brutal focus on the direct line. We are witnessing the birth of a new era, one that is colder, sharper, and far less forgiving than the one it is replacing. The role of Catherine, the new queen-in-waiting, is the true engine of this transition. While the public focuses on the tragic news of her own health battles, the leaked documents suggest that she is the cornerstone of the new regime's stability. She is the one who reset the monarchy, moving it away from the chaotic drama of the Sussexes and the perceived frailty of Charles. However, this power comes with a terrifying cost. The papers allegedly mention a total image control protocol, a strategy that demands Catherine remain a flawless symbol even while she recovers. This is the paradox of the new monarchy. It is more modern in its management, but more demanding in its expectations. The men in gray suits have swapped their fountain pens for algorithms, analyzing public sentiment with a clinical detachment that Charles could never master. Behind the scenes, the transition is described as a hostile takeover of the palace's administrative core. Charles's long-serving advisors are being sidelined, replaced by William's hand-picked team of strategists. The king's environmental causes and his personal crusades are being relegated to the archives to make room for the Wales brand. This is the brutal reality of the crown. It has no room for the vanity of a departing sovereign. The leaked abdication papers represent the final surrender of Charles's influence. He is being turned into a figure of historical curiosity while he is still alive to see it. The public is beginning to feel the shift. The warmth of the old era is being replaced by the clinical precision of the new one. William and Catherine are no longer the future. They are the present. And as they step into the light, they are making it clear that the era of Charles was merely a necessary, if painful, interruption in the grander design of the Windsor survival. The king has signed his name, but the new king has already moved in. With the signature on the alleged abdication papers, a terrifying transformation has occurred. Vua Charles III has ceased to be a sovereign and has become a relic. This is the tripwire, or the existential death of a man who spent 7 decades defining himself by a role he no longer holds. In the cold, vast corridors of Sandringham or Windsor, the former king is now a ghost in his own home. The tragic news isn't just a headline anymore. It is the daily reality of a man watching his own life's work being managed by others. The palace machinery, which once moved at his command, now hums with a new energy, centered around a new king. Charles is left with the silence, a deafening, heavy silence that follows the loss of ultimate power. The crown has been removed, but the weight of it has left a permanent indentation on the man. Sources close to the private royal residences describe a scene of profound isolation. The king's personal staff, many of whom served him for half a century, are being reassigned or retired. The information guillotine has done its work. The public has already moved on to the era of William. This is the brutal efficiency of the British monarchy. It has no room for nostalgia. The leaked papers allegedly outline the Quiet Life Protocol, a set of restrictions designed to keep Charles out of the public eye to ensure he does not overshadow his successor. He is being sanitized, hidden away like a secret the family no longer wants to discuss. The fatal flaw of his reign was that it was too short to build a fortress of legacy, leaving him vulnerable to being erased by the very system he worshipped. The psychological toll of this vanishing is immense. To look in the mirror and see a face that was once on the currency, but now belongs to a man with no authority, is a trauma few can imagine. The leaked documents reportedly mention the preservation of dignity, a polite way of saying the palace will manage Charles's final years with clinical detachment. The man who wanted to be a defender of faiths is now struggling to defend his own relevance. Every tremor in his hands, every distant gaze captured by a telescopic lens, is now viewed not as the weakness of a leader, but as the frailty of a retiree. The crown is gone, and with it, the armor that protected Charles from the reality of his own mortality. He has fulfilled his final duty. He has given the institution the transition it demanded. But in return, the institution has given him the one thing he always feared: total, irreversible silence. The king has signed the papers, and the world has already stopped listening. We have reached the ultimate conclusion of this historical tremor, the final chapter in the short and turbulent reign of Charles III. The alleged abdication papers are more than just a legal exit. They are a chilling testament to the cold, clinical reality of the British state. As the world watches the power move from a father to a son, we are forced to confront the absolute truth about the crown. It does not care about the human heart that beats beneath the ermine. Charles spent a lifetime preparing for a role that he was eventually forced to surrender, a victim of his own biology and the ruthless demands of an institution that prizes continuity above compassion. This is the tuhuyat, or the fatal wound that every monarch must eventually face the moment they realize they are merely a temporary occupant of a seat that will eventually belong to another. But as the era of Charles vanishes into the archives, the era of William and Catherine is being built on the ruins of this crisis. They are the new architects, the ones who have learned from the scars of the past to build a fortress of legacy that is more resilient, more calculated, and far less exposed. The leaked papers suggest that the purge of the old guard is now complete. The monarchy has reset its clock, leaving behind the baggage of the past and the emotional wreckage of the family's inner conflicts. For William, the crown is not a gift. It is a weight he must now carry with a surgical precision. He knows that his father's abdication was more than a medical necessity. It was a warning. It was a reminder that in the eyes of the Shadow Council, every individual is replaceable, and every sacrifice is justified if it saves the crown. The question for you, the audience, is simple. Is this the survival of an ancient mystery, or the final desperate act of a system that has lost its soul? We have decoded the secrets. We have baktash, the layers of palace spin, and we have revealed the shadow world behind the velvet curtains. The abdication of King Charles will be remembered as the day the crown finally dropped its mask, showing the world that even a king can be hollowed out by the weight of his own destiny. The signatures are dry. The transition is irrevocable. The king has retreated into the silence of his final years, and a new king stands in the blinding glare of the global spotlight. The monarchy lives on, but it is a monarchy without its human shield. As the information guillotine remains poised for the next leak, the only certainty is that the House of Windsor will never be the same. The papers have been published, the secret is out, and as history moves forward, the silence of the former king will be his final, most powerful message to the world. Thank you for walking through this labyrinth of power with us. The king is gone. Long live the king. Stay vigilant, stay sharp, and never stop looking for the truth hidden in plain sight. This is the end of our analysis, but only the beginning of a new, darker chapter for the world's most famous family.